Yes.
Miss Ailes was here to say something.
Yeah, I told her I would call her.
I literally just had something stuck in my craw.
I've had a real good discussion.
Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Board of County Commissioners now in session. Please come forward. I can't remember your name.
Miss Elder.
Miss Elzer. She wanted to speak real quick about the senior citizens in Carabel. She's agreed to make it real brief. Please come forward, state your name for the record.
Good morning. My name is Jan Elser, and I am one of the members of the board of the Senior Center in Franklin County, Carabel. I just wanted to let you know that the Senior Center has saved my life and the life of the lady that's next to us, with us. And we both had husbands that passed away. And as far as I was lost and didn't know what to do. And I went up to Tallahassee to a neurologist and everything, but what helped me was the Senior Center. And I just want you all to know that it's very good to have it, and a lot of us over 70 really enjoy it. And we do encourage anybody to come, anybody and everybody to come. Thank you for your time.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
One comment real quick is we understand the need for the senior citizens center over there in Carabel and across our country as far as that goes. And we do appreciate you coming here this morning. Only thing I would like to say is that our funding is really limited, so the county can only help so much. You know what I'm saying? But we do appreciate you, and we appreciate the board over there, and we hope that you continue to enjoy that. And thank you for coming today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next will be Mr. Michael Morone, Board of Adjustment.
Actually, it'll be Mr. Mark Carrington. Has way more stripes on his shoulder than I do.
Okay, I'm just going by what's wrote here.
Yes, sir.
I guess the first item would be the return of the variance request for the old dock site or boat landing over on St. George Island.
That was it right there. That's
Okay.
the original report.
Excuse me, Mark. Is there anything on our iPad about this?
Yes, sir. If you go to the Advisory Board of Adjustment bookmark, you should see the original report.
Okay.
That's
There we go.
what I just handed Mark also.
Okay, there we go. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, and this was a consideration of a request for variance to construct a vertical board and post retaining wall around a self-contained spoil area within the 50-foot critical habitat zone to contain spoil material from a future offshore dredging operation. The property is in a VE flood zone and borders on the Apalachicola Bay. The property is located at the northwest corner of Franklin Boulevard, also known as 141 West Bayshore Drive, St. George Island, Franklin County, Florida. The request is submitted by Garlic Environmental Associates, Inc., agent for George Floyd, owner of AMM, Inc. This was tabled at the January 21st, 2017 Board of County Commission meeting. And you would ask us to, the staff, to meet with Mr. Floyd and his representatives to see if we could work something out. My understanding, I met several times with Mr. Floyd and Mr. Garlic. We've had some discussions, met out on the site, but my understanding is he is still requesting the same variances before.
Any comments from the board?
Yeah. What you saying, y'all didn't work nothing out?
What do I think?
No, I said, what you saying, well, didn't nothing work out?
We weren't able to reach any sort of agreement.
What we here for today?
Well, we need to make some sort of
We need
decision.
to either approve the variance that was granted by the Board of Adjustments or deny the variance. That's what we're here today to do.
Motion to deny.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Lockley, second by Commissioner Sanders to deny the variance. Any discussion, further discussion by the board?
Commissioners, this is a hearing, a public hearing of sorts, and I think we need to give the applicant an opportunity if they want to present any information. I know they had made their presentation originally, but they had also, if my memory serves correctly, they had reserved a right to ask Mr. Carrington some additional questions, but they had otherwise, as I recall, concluded their presentation. And we do have the applicant and his representative here, and if they have a different recollection, then I think they need to step forward at this time and say so.
Mr.
And
Chairman.
if they want to ask questions of Mr. Carrington, I think they do have a procedural right to ask him some questions.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask the attorney?
Mm-hmm.
Is this considered a quasi judicial hearing then?
It
Are
is.
you
All of
considering
these-
that?
All these variances, special exceptions, et cetera, they're all quasi-judicial hearings.
Well, the reason why I went ahead and seconded Mr. Noah's motion is this thing's been lingering on since January. And they've asked us to delay it. We've had staff come and tell us that they have not reached no other kind of agreement, that they can't reach an agreement. They haven't reached an agreement. So, I mean, that's the reason why I seconded the motion.
I do understand, but having a motion and second, it is incumbent to have discussion, and I wanted to bring this procedural point to the board's attention, and also to the applicant and his representative to give them an opportunity to make any further presentation if they should choose to do so. So
To clarify the record, really, I asked for the original presentation to be tabled to give staff time to try to work out some of these issues and try to make it more accommodating. And it's been going on, like, as the record shows, since January. That obviously hasn't happened. I know that they've been back and forth and looked at different things, and the applicant now, as I understand it, has come back and said, well, we're going to stick with what we originally presented. So I just want to clarify that the applicant did not ask for the motion to be, the issue to be tabled. I asked for the issue to be tabled to give the applicant and county staff more time to try to work through some of the details of this. Please state your name for the record.
Dan Garlick, representative for A&M. I just want to clarify a couple things. That's correct. That's where we're still going as the original thing. But Mark and I met, and I appreciate your time, Mark. We went out there several times to examine the site and determine, if we got some areas that we could work with on this thing. And I think we did agree that there are some areas that we could agree. There's some areas that we didn't agree. So it wasn't that we had a wholesale couldn't agree. But there are some areas I think that we agreed that we could do a wall around the basin, backfill that, also put a wall along the waterfront, backfill that to the elevation of 5 feet,
I thought we were talking more like 4 feet.
4 feet, okay, that's fine. Where we have our differences is placing a wall and sand along the remainder of the waterfront, which is along the marsh, actually not the waterfront, but the marsh. And there's a couple of questions that we still haven't resolved. One is, I understand, the wall requires a variance if you put it within 50 feet of the water. We disagree on where if you can actually put sand within that 50-foot setback. It doesn't really, it's not clear in the code that says that sand's prohibited. It talks about impervious areas versus pervious areas. So we do have we want to reserve that, because if this goes beyond this point, then that will be an issue to come up. We certainly understand the wall. But what Mark Carrington did dispute was whether or not sand or a wall would require it, because we talked about maybe deleting the wall on the marsh, but he still felt that the sand was an issue. It didn't matter if it was 1 foot or 50 feet. He still felt that required a variance. So we'll have an issue with that later on. But since we have that issue, that's why we've continued to go on with the project that we have. And Mr. Floyd can take it from there. Mark, am I correct on our conceptual
Yes.
concurrence
Yes.
on? Okay, just want to get that in the
We
record.
talked about, there is evidence of erosion along the bay shore of the site. We have, in the past, given variances for people to address erosion. So we talked about the possibility of putting a lower wall along the bay shore and backfilling behind it, which we have elsewhere in the county. Not an 8-foot wall, but something lower. But it's my understanding that they're wanting to stick with their original request.
Please come forward, state your name for the record.
Well, Commissioners, before we get started, let me just give the board some legal advice based on what Mr. Garlick just said, that there's a question whether or not putting fill it constitutes development within your code. Is that, am I understanding your question correctly?
We have disagreement. Not fill, but purpose.
Well, this is all governed by your critical shoreline ordinance, Commissioners, and on paragraph, let's see, section 3 definitions, at paragraph 5, development. It says development is defined in your critical shoreline ordinance as section 200.20 of the Franklin County Zoning Code. And when you refer back to section 220.20 Development and Zoning Code, it does in fact say that putting fill on a parcel of land does constitute development. And that would require a development order. I don't see anything here that talks about pervious or impervious. I don't see anything that says that. Where in the code are you looking at?
I'm referring to the criteria for determining whether or not a variance can be approved, or what those types of development that can occur within the 50-foot setback that are not prohibited, is what I was talking about. So what we're
You're
saying
making
is,
reference to whether a variance.
what we're saying is that placing sand within 50 feet in the critical shoreline or critical habitat zone is a pervious material. It requires development order, surely.
Correct.
But as far as does it require variance is the issue that we're having more of an issue with. We disagree with that. And we understand there's only been one permit issued by the county, and probably since it ever went from 2004, and we're not sure if that was actually issued correctly or incorrectly, but there's only been one that's been issued. And that was for the sand, the White Sands project over in Alligator Point, which actually has a wall under it to boot, so theoretically it should have gotten a variance anyway for a wall.
I understand
That's
better
it.
what you're saying, but no, we do have a disagreement, I suppose, on that legal point, because in order to be granted a variance, which they have applied for the variance, to put the field in the 50-foot critical habitat zone, there's nothing that I've found in your shoreline ordinance which would allow the placement of fill, frankly, either within your critical shoreline district or your critical shoreline district is 150 feet landward of the waters and wetlands of Franklin County. Then your critical habitat zone is the 50 feet landward of the waters and wetlands of Franklin County.
And the reason we applied for variance originally was specifically because we wanted to put a wall within that 50-foot area. So that's, and again, it's something that'll probably come out another time, but for the record, I think it's good that we get into the record today.
Is there a difference, Attorney Schuler, in trying to prevent erosion as opposed to building an 8-foot wall to use to withhold fill on site? Is there a difference of the two?
Well,
It's one thing to address erosion, but it's another thing to put an 8-foot wall up to hold fill. Is there a difference there?
Yes, and I mean, I'll have to get some testimony from Mr. Carrington, but I know he and I have had the conversation as to whether, because in your critical shoreline ordinance, there actually is an exception. This would be under Section 5, Development Standards in the Critical Shoreline District. The applicant does have land which is Zone C3, and there actually is an exception that would allow for water-dependent structures to be constructed in the Critical Shoreline District. However, I have spoken to Mr. Carrington. Of course, he has to be the one to testify. What the lawyer says is not evidence, but he has advised me that what the applicant is proposing would not qualify for the exception because the retaining wall and backfill
Or not a water-dependent use?
That is correct. That is correct.
Could you speak
And
to
there
this
are-
issue when he gets through, please, Mark?
And there are other provisions in, again, the exceptions within the critical shoreline district. That's at 150 feet landward of the water and wetlands in Franklin County. There's also an exception for erosion control and shoreline stabilization structures. And again, Mr. Carrington has to be the one to testify, but we've discussed this, and it's Mr. Carrington's opinion in his discussions with me that what they're proposing does not constitute an erosion control or shoreline stabilization.
Other than what we've conceptually agreed to, which is along the basin and also along the waterfront. I mean, he has conceptually agreed. I think I'm correct in.
Michael, let the
Yes.
planner.
You know, there's allowances in your code for erosion control structures. They have to be, when you grant a variance for that, it has to be the minimum variance that will, you know, address the problem. And there's obviously erosion along the bay shore. And we went out there, we met, we talked, and, you know, I agreed that, yes, there is erosion, and if you want to build an erosion control structure of some sort along the bay shore and, you know, put the backfill behind it, you know, I would probably support that. The thing is, you know, an 8-foot tall wall is more than the minimums necessary. So we were discussing some sort of a shorter wall, maybe 4 feet.
That's what you were referring to earlier.
Right, that's what I was referring to earlier. But a shoreline erosion control structure is different from a 8-foot wall to hold in spoil for spoil disposal site. So yes, there's a difference.
Okay, that was my question, is there a difference in the two?
Right.
And on the variance
It
issue.
have they applied for a variance to do the shoreline, the bay shoreline to,
Yeah,
they have done that?
yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it's, that actually, I believe this application comes to you with a recommendation for approval from your advisory board of adjustment and also your advisory planning and zoning commission.
Well, I
Your-
mean, that wasn't,
That's a different.
no, that was, what you're talking about, I mean, they don't have a separate application in for just a shoreline erosion.
No, it's this total project.
It's the total project.
The project that they're.
Right.
So you
No,
can allow one part of this project without allowing the other part of the project?
No, I would not recommend that my recommendation is that you vote on this, one way or the other as an entire package. that
But
you
it
don't
seems
kind of
like to me
split it
that he's
out.
entitled to do the erosion control that Mark was referring to on the bay side of St. George. But if it's all in one project and we don't agree with an 8-foot tall wall, then it all gets thrown out. Then they're gonna turn around and sue us because we can't even do erosion control on the bay side. So to me, you got two different things here. One is clearly allowable, and in the planner's opinion, the other is not clearly allowable. But you got it all submitted as one project. I want this on the record, that the bay shore erosion control, the planner has agreed that could be done. The 8-foot wall that he's wanting to build to retain spoil, under his interpretation, is not allowed. But it's all being submitted as one project, so we can't allow him to do the erosion control. And if we allow him to do the erosion control, then we're also gonna have to allow him to do the 8-foot wall because of the way it's being presented.
But the applicant does not, you don't have an application before you for a 4-foot wall. You have an application before you for an 8-foot wall unless I mean.
Is that
my
correct?
My understanding is the
Okay.
applicant is
I just wanna make sure
submitting
we all-
to your consideration his original proposal, which was the 8-foot wall.
So you're saying
And
that
that's
the
what I'm-
erosion control on the bay side will also be an 8-foot wall? If this project is approved?
What they're proposing now, yes.
Okay.
You know, I had thought maybe they would modify their application, you know, to maybe have a shorter wall on the bay shore or something, but they've chosen
They've
to
chosen to go with 8-foot wall.
go with the original application.
And that,
we
Mr.
have-
Chairman, is the reason why I seconded the motion to deny it, because we're on the original proposal, and it is the 8-foot wall.
Correct.
We have some subsequent information. that
Please state your name for the record, Joel.
George Floyd, Director of Apalachicola Maritime Museum. And thank you for your patience in dealing with this matter. And, I'd like to just recap a critical point in that in the October 2015 Board of County Commission meeting, this board did unanimously approve the Harbor Dredge project, and that the fill was to be placed in the AE zone We did not want to put it in the V zone at that time because we did not have the knowledge of how to get that permitted. And so this marina project has been approved and will proceed as approved on the October 2015 agreement or approval. And that will put the spoil from the project in the AE zone along Bayshore. And it was part of the advisory version of the Board of Adjustment that that there be a drainage system to ensure that water would not pool up on the Bayshore Avenue and flood out any of the businesses there, that there be a swell, and that there be vegetative cover on that mountain of sand. And that's what we will proceed with as approved. And I appreciate the board understanding that. That is a critical point, one. So if this fails, that's what will happen next. And it has been approved. A couple other points I would like to add to this is that, can I use your mouse or mic? Michael has been kind enough to allow me to use the projector that was here. So in follow-up to the January meeting, I think I can do it from here, hopefully. In follow-up to the January meeting, we began a lot of research. And we employed professionals whose career has been in dealing with regulatory matters of this nature as advisors. And one of the things that I heard clearly from the commissioners is y'all needed more information and access to more information. So what we did is we created a website right here, and it's sgiharbor.ammfl.org. And I sent all of y'all an email on Friday night late that incorporates all the latest information, including the public records request results that have been from what has been produced. And I think you'll find this information very informative. For starters, is the master plan in the large scale 24 by 36 format. And if you mouse over any of these images up here, it'll take you to the photos. These are some of the critical points. 1959, this was the harbor. This was 1975, loaded with shrimp boats and oyster boats. This is 1984, over 30 vessels. And I believe Commissioner Massey, you at one point I think had a boat there during that time frame. I remember these days. I remember the ferry. I'm old enough, unfortunately, to be of that ability. And then this is the current NOAA chart, 8-foot reported depth, 1972, all the way into the harbor. That is the current NOAA chart. So if there's a mariner making passage through the ICW and a heavy northwest wind, they're going to look to go into that harbor and run aground. These are significant elements that was considered diligently by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection when they authorized this harbor project. Further, this large-scale plan will produce this link. And this link is the master plan of the entire project. Now, up here on the left-hand side, these are links where you can turn on or off filters to see the specifics of the harbor plan. And you can zoom in and zoom out. I can't do it with just the mouse, but on a website, but you can do it when you load it into your PDF viewer. Other information includes the master plan and a 16 8x10-inch panels. This is intended to be printed on a 22 by 34 plotter blueprint machine, but it can be printed in an 8.5 by 11 format if you want to get the high-level view. These are some of the narratives that we presented at previous Board of Commissioner meetings, the history of the St. George Island Ferry Boat Basin, and a narrated imagery. That was the one that I presented in the January meeting. The Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, and this, you can come down here and you can click the link, click this image to go to the link too. The permits, Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, we play by the rules all the way. And they gave us the authorization to proceed with this harbor and that it would not affect shellfish harvesting. And incidentally, we are going to continue to play by DAC's rules with the number of vessels that are allowed in that harbor. We are not going to exceed and that was a big point of contention in the January discussions. I've watched the video. There's going to be no more than 10 boats there in an overnight capacity. And that is the interpretation from DAX as to how that's interpreted. There can be 120 boats launch and retrieve there, just like they're doing off the causeway. And that's what most would happen with most of the users of this harbor, is that there will be trailering in their vessels on a trailer and trailing them off in the end of the day.
Mr.
Then
Chairman, can I
there-
ask you a question? Is that letter signed?
It is signed. If you go in here and click on the link, it'll bring you to the signed version.
The first one you showed in the January meeting was an unsigned letter. That's caught my attention in the first meeting. I presume there's a signed letter somewhere.
Yes, I presume it's on letterhead, and there's a signed version there. And I didn't put the whole letter in. I just put it in a frame. You can click it and go to the link to get it. And same with the DEP letter. This is the full scope of the letter. And so, going back up to the top, I wanted to continue that. So this website has all the information that we have. And it's available to all of you to view, or anybody in the public to view at any time. We published an article in the Coastline, this month's issue, front page, second section, that had a lot of this content in it, and had these photos of these letters of authorization or permission. We've held 2 public forums at the facility this month, and had a fair amount of turnout with questions, and mostly supportive of the project. I expected that we would have some we had some inquiries after the December, we had some meetings on the property after the December Board of Adjustment hearing, and we found them all to be very beneficial in terms of eliminating confusion. The whole thing about the 8-foot wall, I will come to in just a minute. I assume y'all received those emails as of Friday that had this link to this website. We did a public records request because I'm no expert in this matter, but I've been told by Mr. Garlick and others that there's a lot of breakwaters going in with fill behind them. And so we sent a check for $1,500 more or less, but over $1,500 I believe it was, to pay for all the public record permitting documents that have occurred since my father was the planner and brought this ordinance into being. And we did the first 5 years because we wanted to see what kind of content we were going to get and come up with an analytical plan. We got those first documents delivered a couple, 3 weeks ago. We scanned them. There were large format plots that we had to take out of county to FedEx Kinko's to get them scanned and reduced so that we can include all of those. All of those are included, and I want to come back to that. I've tried to reach out to the commissioners through the email. Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Massey have both come to the project and looked at it, and I received no negative feedback that said this is awful at that time, or that there's a problem, or we don't like it, or here's what you need to change. It was generally supportive. Since that time, I've read in the paper, the Apalachicola Times, that there are comments that the plan is awful coming from the Board of Commissioners, and I've made calls to that commissioner to try to please let's get together and let me understand what the issues are so I can potentially address them. And I think information sharing is what drives this purpose behind this website, because I'm trying to do the right thing. So, we've talked about the October 15th meeting where this project was approved. I want to get back to that timeline for just a minute. So it was approved, and we're ready to roll with that project. We hired an engineer as a response to that Board of Adjustment advisory meeting. And we hired an engineer whose competency was in the laws and rules of FEMA. and she happens to be here, Gina Johnson, today, and I'm going to ask her to come up once I'm done. And we said, Gina, first, please, give us the engineering to create the swell and the drainage so that we don't flood Bayshore Avenue, which she did. And we met on site, and during those meetings, I said, well, gosh, it would sure be nice if we could use some of this spoil to raise the level of the land around the basin so that every time there's a full moon-induced or storm-induced higher than average tide, it doesn't flood everything. I mean, it happens once or twice a year, and it doesn't flood everything, but Hurricane Hermine brought in a pretty good amount of water. And so in her analysis, and I'm going to let her speak to this, but wave ramp up and topping height is what mandated an 8-foot height of the fill area. Now, it could go with or without a wall. We felt it would be best with a wall because that prevents that from being eroded back into the bay.